Electroi is a undefined type hero, and he's a bit of an unusual one actually. So he kind of contributes to world building because, as you might have noticed, he is a element master. So to refresh your memory, element masters and celestials are some of the first people that got elemental powers ages ago and had far greater control over it, and they usually had matching tattoos to kind of show their power. And in the present day, you're not going to see a lot of element masters anymore because most of them are dead now. So in the few rare cases that you do meet one, it's usually someone who's a bit more unusual and got into a loophole so that they don't die of old age, like Inferno, for example, who got revived as a fire ghost. So, as an example, Inferno can do a lot of things with fire. He can make fire not hurt. He can make it hurt if he wants to. He has great aim over it. He can turn it into resin. He can make imaginary objects with fire. All kinds of things, right? So Electroi over here can do stuff that like that as well, but with electricity. And the reason he's a bit unusual and he's still alive today is because he made a covenant with God. So I thought this would be a really interesting character. He kind of acts like a sleeper agent. So Electroi doesn't die of old age, and he switched his air mastery with electricity more specifically in his covenant with God. And God basically calls him to do things and to help people whenever he needs them, which would be very interesting to see on screen because you don't always understand God's plan. Um, so he wouldn't have a lot of context on screen, and other people would meet him. They'd be kind of confused on what is going on because he would just kind of show up. And he's a very laid back, almost introverted person that kind of just does his own thing because you got to remember this guy's like 3,000 ish years old, just like Inferno. And so he doesn't do much but just relax all day and do whatever he feels like. But he does, of course, kind of serve a purpose. So he's kind of just there to do his job, right? You can already kind of see his tattoos on screen, but maybe I'll put up an older picture of the drawing so you can see them more clearly. And he even has a prism-shaped mark near his abs to kind of show his covenant with God. I thought it'd be unique. And so the way his tattoos interact with his power is that usually they, with most element masters, they kind of light up. And you can see electricity sprouts of the tattoos everywhere and of his whole body when he charges up his powers. His hair starts almost glowing, and his eyes as well. And then these big jolts of electricity that you see next to his arms are actually little electric hooks that come off his back that he can kind of use to hurt people. And like I said, like kind of hook the skin of their body, for example. And then he has one of those little hooks on his right shoulder as well to maybe lend an extra hand in a sense. And you gotta remember, God also buffed him up when he made the Covenant, so he is pretty overpowered but very situational because he doesn't use his powers when he doesn't have to. I also think if Celestials were an actual show, he would be very interesting to see on screen. When God would call him, for example, to help with the heroes, because God tends to speak in very indirect ways, like through circumstances, people, or maybe he would just physically hear him in his head, like a little voice or something. So this would make it very interesting. And on screen, he, like I said, wouldn't have a lot of context. And I thought it'd be really funny if, for example, he would speak to Inferno every now and then, so he kind of knows what he's about, but the other heroes kind of just don't. He just shows up. So it'd be really funny if Inferno's other friends in like the main cast ask him like, "What about this Electroi guy? Like, what does he do? Why does he just show up?" And then Inferno kind of like describes him almost in a somewhat intimidating way because he's like a bit mysterious. And he's like, yeah, just let him mind his own business, just don't question it, and everything will be just fine. And that would almost make him sound a bit intimidating because he actually kind of is. You gotta remember, this guy's like really strong if he wants to be. But then eventually, Inferno would probably give his full backstory to his friends so they would kind of know what Electroi actually does. And then about his design, you might notice if you're looking very closely that Electroi also has more visible scars on his face and on his right arm because, well, Element Masters in the present day are usually very old and have done a lot of battles. But Electroi, as well as the other Element Masters, fought against a lot of evils back in the day. So it really shows in his design. And I thought it'd also be really interesting when you imagine him on screen in action The background you see in this drawing, for example, was inspired by a scene that I had in mind. Imagine Electroi like helps the other heroes to find the hidden bases of the villain force and like where they're hiding. And then at some point he shows up in one of their dark bunkers at like one of the gates in front of the Guardians, and he kind of just poses in front of them, and he just stares. And then he's just like, "Hey, have you ever been hurt by 1 trillion kilojoules of electricity?" Yeah, me neither. And then he just like charges up so hard that he almost like looks like a flashbang, and he just sends an entire like death ray of lightning onto one of the guards, and he just turns into a disintegrated corpse and like starts twitching on the ground. And then he just walks through the gate or something. I thought that'd be really funny. Like he's a bit nonchalant in a sense. He has like a bit of aura. I don't really know what other normal use word I could use. I also thought he would be a good replacement for Silly Mage in one of the final scenes of Celestial Season 5, like as a concept. So in Season 5, the main villain is Count Losselor, the vampire count who wants to take over Britain for one of his plans. And at the end, when everyone's struggling to kill him, Silly Mage would show up and use a somewhat inappropriate spell, if you remember one of my old videos, to kill Count Losselor with lightning.
Dude, cast a spell.
Willy Wigger, kill that
So I kind of regret making that video a little bit because I changed my ways a bit, and I thought it'd be much more fitting instead to have Electroi show up in his place on one of the mountains, and then he would like send hellish lightning onto Count Losslor, and he would like almost turn into a skeleton. And maybe he would even like it would look very epic and very creative. You would, for example, have him like getting shackled by electric chains onto the ground, and he would like scream for mercy or something. So I thought that'd also be really funny. I also had some fun ideas for attacks for Electro if he was a playable character in the Celestials like video game. If you remember, it was kind of like Marvel Rivals, and CEE was the name short for Celestials Eden of Elements. And so Electro, for example, I think a fun ultimate idea for him would be like a proton death ray. Um, where maybe he, like I said, he charges up so hard that he turns into a walking flashbang, and he just sends this hellish lightning beam in front of him, out of his arms or out of his chest, onto his enemies, and then other enemies nearby would also get insta killed, like from the death ray, because the electricity would come out of the rest of the beam and like expand. But then the most fun idea I had out of them all, I think, was I think it'd be fun if he had like a domain expansion in like a sense, like domain expansion, proton expulsion, for example. And so maybe like everything would go dark, and God would give him like almost full control over like every proton in like the world for like a few short seconds or something, and he would kind of like slow down time. Everything would like go dark, and he'd be able to like see the protons or like whatever it's called, and like the neutrons in like everything, in like objects, humans, everything. And he could just kill someone by just manually taking the protons out of their body and just removing it, so their entire like molecular structure breaks down. So I thought that that would be a really cool ultimate attack in like in CEE, if he could like do like a domain expansion, everything goes dark, and then the other enemies and like everyone around him, you could like see like the proton symbols in them, and then you could like from a distance take them away and like kill them if you want to, and maybe you could even do something with objects as well. I thought that would be really cool. And yeah, I really like this idea for a character. Very unusual, very interesting to hear about. And I really tried my best with the drawing. I think it looks great, and it really conveys like that he's like this guy with like a lot of background, and he's like very intimidating. But he is one of the good guys, of course. I love how the lightning effects turned out, because shading is definitely not my biggest strength, because I don't always understand how lighting is supposed to work. But I think the drawing looks beautiful, and I love it. So I hope you do too. Okay, I don't have much else to say about him, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you in the next one. Bye!